Hello everybody and welcome to Soundcart Live. Today we're talking about crew comms, which is actually one of my favorite topics here. So we're here at the Soundcart and we're looking at everything that we need to explore that, including a nice schematic and workflow, and we're going to talk about everything crew communication, and I'll give you a breakdown of some of the gear that I use for that. So let's go ahead and just get started right to it right after this message. Capturing clean, quality dialogue in vehicles on a film set is one of the most challenging and rewarding processes, and productions continue to push the boundaries of what's possible. This is why I created Recording Dialogue in Cars, a one-stop masterclass for every member of the production sound team. In this course, I'll break down all of today's terminology. We'll cover microphones and rigging, discuss how to navigate complex camera setups, and how to achieve reliable RF performance in the most challenging environments. Come enroll into Recording Dialogue in Cars today at mwsound.net, and I'll see you soon. And I can't believe it has been another week, and it's great to see everyone here for Soundcart Live. And today, we're talking about crew comms, which is probably one of the most important things that we do working on set, because we know things move very fast. So the crew communication is critical. And that's something I'm going to look at today. I'm going to go over my workflow. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the scenarios. So let's just go ahead and get right into it. And hello, everyone, and thank you for joining today. So here we go. So we're going to get right here to our topic. Crew comms for production sound teams. So what are they? So some of you might be absolutely brand new. Well, comms obviously is crew communications. That's what we're talking about. It's how we communicate to each other. So in a narrative sense, which is most of the work that I do, I'm talking about how I'm communicating with my team, and specific the boom operator, the sound utility, or any additionals that I may have working on the set. Some of the considerations when I'm thinking about what kind of setup that I want to do for a crew comms workflow is, first and foremost, what are going to be the range requirements? How far is it that the crew is going to be from me, and how far am I going to be from them is really going to determine the type of systems and deploy antennas that we're going to be doing, and how many members of the team, obviously. So how many systems are we going to need individually so we can all communicate with each other? And what are the best RF allocations for an RF system? I'm going to talk a little bit about where to put those things. Do we need to keep them separate, say, from maybe where we're keeping our talent, and kind of practice good RF practices there? And also developing a communication method as far as the communication protocols on how you communicate with each other as a sound team. So all of those are really going into the goals of the system. Just to tell you a quick story here, the first comm system I ever used on a film set was production walkies. There is the GMRS, or General Mobile Radio Services, the production walkies, which is the business walkies that you see most of the departments use on set. And usually that's in the 400 megahertz band, around 400 going into right below 470. And there are also some VHF options. And you'll find most departments that are using these things. And the first time that I did comms with my cart, I had minimal gear, and you just kind of work with what you have. So we actually use crew radios for that. And my poor crew had to carry around the radios in addition to the IFBs, and wear earpieces, as well as the headphones for listening to the mix and stuff like that. And then I evolved into a different kind of system using UHF wireless, and I just have kind of evolved it over time, and continuing to evolve it. And I don't always do things the same depending upon the type of project or what it is that I'm working with. So let's go right back to some of the components that we would see in a system here. So let me go to that area here. And so here is some of the basic things that I am currently using. First and foremost, this is what the crew-worn equipment is going to be. So for a good comm system, you're going to need a transmitter that is body worn, that allows us to hear the crew members, in specific the mixer, but also the other crew members to hear each other. And here on the left-hand side, you can see the Sony, which I'm putting out here, the UTX B03. So let me go ahead and pull that up here for a second so you can kind of see. I have one here on camera. And you're actually listening right now to what would be like the crew IFB. So I have things routed in the Scorpio right now to where the routing is basically what it is you would hear if we were working together on a project. So I'm just going to pull this down for a second, the microphone here that I'm using for the stream. And this is the crew comms. So this is the Sony, the UWP-D system. And this is the UTX B03, which is the older generation of a system that's still current. And attached to this is a push-to-talk surveillance mic. So when the crew speaks to me, they use this system and they can clip the surveillance wherever is comfortable and then wear this transmitter as a body pack. So this is the system that we use for transmitting to each other. So let's look at some of the other equipment and then we'll go into some of the routing of that as well. So obviously we also have, and let me go to that screen here, so I'm kind of bouncing back and forth today, so bear in there with me. Okay, so then we also have the crew IFB. So let me put this down. So the two type of IFBs, or interruptible foldback system, or listening device, however you want to call it. Here in my hand right here is the Lectrosonics R1A. So I got a handful of these that I use. And then I'm also using these days the Lectrosonics M2R-A, which is the latest version. And this thing is super cool because it goes into IFB mode as well. So here, I'll kind of power it on. You might be able to see it. It depends upon what this camera is doing. This right here is the COMS, or the IFB, the listening device that is sent to the crew, which is usually done in mono. So this one actually can do stereo, but we'll save that for another stream altogether. We'll just start with the components and then get into some of the routing. Okay, so next up, we're going to go here back to the sound bag or cart equipment. So the equipment that we usually have on the cart or the bag. And as you can see here, you can use, I just chose what I'm doing on this particular sound cart that we're using for Sound Cart Live, an IFB, such as this is an Lectrosonics SMWB transmitter, which is their wideband analog digital hybrid transmitter in IFB mode. So either one of these, we'll go back here to the crew IFBs, can actually receive this device. And then also on the cart side, we have, excuse me, we have the comms, or the receivers that sit on top of the cart. So let me see if I can give you a view of that here from the top of the cart. It's just out of view, but those are elevated actually on the top of the cart. Those are the receivers. So on the cart side, we are simply we are transmitting out of the IFB, which is this antenna here in the upper right-hand corner. And that is going to the listening devices of the crew, but we're also receiving the crew back to the Scorpio here in the sound bag. So that is the equipment that would be necessary to accomplish a crew system where they can talk to you and you can talk to them. Now, there are many types of systems that are utilized in a crew comms setup. So some may prefer to talk onto the boom. I've seen workflows like that where the operator gives a note to the mixer on the boom. Usually that's something I don't do because that's a public line. So I don't want to be sending and talking about the shot that could interrupt and go into people's context. Now, there are workarounds for that. I've done things where maybe we didn't have a comm where the operator would say, hey, PFL. And what that means, obviously pre-fade listen, and then you could pull it down and then have a communication. But once again, that's kind of an awkward setup to work that way. And usually there's an expectation to have some good air on set just from the boom. So we don't want to be using the boom for the communication method. So once we have all of the pieces in play, then we need to be thinking about what the routing is going to be. So let's get to that screen here and talk a little bit about the routing. So here is, and I have to say thanks to Zlatko, by the way, for this, because he talked about my chicken scratch, and it definitely was some chicken scratch for my last schematic. So Zlatko, I have upgraded and gone to a better view of that. And I also have a more close-up view of this that we'll take a look later when we go into the exact signal flow. But what I wanted to do here is break down the current signal flow plan. Now, if I pull that up, and let's go ahead and do that right now, I want to show you something that might be interesting. So if I come here and then I pull up the signal flow, this will be a little bit of a bigger screen to see. You might notice here on the left-hand side that the return receivers, the boom comm, utility comm, and additional comm for the three that I have on this cart are actually going into mic inputs. And they're not going into the return comms of the Scorpio. And the reason for that specifically is that the Sony UWP D11 system that I'm using for the boom comm transmits and receives have a mic level output. So the return input on the 8 series recorders is a balanced line level input. Now, I could sheet it because it also has that particular unit a headphone out if I want it, but then you're really mismatching the impedance, and it can get a little tricky and probably minimize your signal to noise. So in my particular case on this system here, since I'm using the SL2 in the slot mount, I've got additional inputs here on this left side where I have my 3 comm receivers going into those mic inputs. So let's go back to that particular screen and take a look closer at this schematic. So as you can see in the upper left-hand side, I'll use the arrow so you can see, these are all of my inputs coming in from my boom, my lavs, going into the SL2, A1 through B4 currently for the 8 channels of wireless on this cart currently outfitted. And then it could be any of these channels 1 through 29, because one of the beauties of the 8 series is any input can go to any channel. So we have full flexibility as far as that routing matrix. And then it travels down, obviously, to the mix bus, post-fade, with the ISO records, and then goes into the output of, over here on the right-hand side of the Crew IFB, which sends to the Lectrosonics transmitter. And in addition to that, the channel 30, 31, and 32 that you see here are actually sending to a bus 6 called COMS. And that particular item is also being sent to the Crew IFB. Now, what's important is, obviously, is that we're not sending the COM channels to the mix or any of the buses that go to the public channels, such as the Comtech out or the speaker outs, or, the set speaker, that is. We might use it on a cart speaker. And then the other thing is notice here that I have 2 headphone presets. I have a mix and then a mix plus comms. Because in my particular workflow, I prefer to have, here, let me go back to this camera here so we can see what we're doing. There we go. Doesn't want to cooperate right now, so we'll fix that here. There we go. Okay, cool. So in my particular workflow, I like to have 2 headphone presets because when I'm rolling, I don't want to hear any of the comms systems in my particular workflow, because there might be a little bit of futs or something in the wireless and the comms for whatever reason, and I want to make sure everything that I'm hearing is just what I'm capturing for the poly capture. So let's go back into here and take you back into past the routing, and I want to show you those two presets here that I use. Now this is how I'm listening. So here I have a mix plus comms and then a mix here in this box. And then mix is highlighted in green because it's a favorite, so I can quickly toggle back and forth when I'm rolling and go right into a mix only bus here, which is all my ISO channels, a post fade mix obviously. And then I've got the mix plus comms, which includes the 6 here, not channel 6, but bus 6. And once I have that set, then I've got an all-way communication systems. Now there are some other things that need to happen in order to make that work. We have to also make sure that our comms mic is also routed to that output. So let's go ahead and take a look at some of that particular routing. So if I come in here and I look at the routing, I can see that my mix is going directly to, and we'll go to the buses here, to the crew comms, as well as the particular channels. And let's open that up here and scroll down to channels 31 and 32, which are sending right here. And I can show you in another spot here, just this lower left-hand corner, you can see that that's where that's going to the crew comms. So the routing on this particular thing, the goal is for all-way communication. There are a couple things that I would like to see Sound Devices improve on their routing structure, because I do the same routing structure, say, on the Kantar X3, and I notice that there are some things that are a little wonky as far as the routing capabilities are concerned. And what I wanted to basically show is that if you route, and let me go to this screen so I can demonstrate it on the schematic here. Okay. And then pull that up. So initially, what I wanted to do was, rather than take the bus out to the mix comms here, and then also to, well, excuse me, let me back up. Rather than take the bus out directly to the crew IFB and to the comms in the here, I wanted to actually assign in the crew output the headphone left, right. Now you can absolutely do that, but the issue is that it's post fade. So depending upon your headphone level, it adjusts the output of what it's sending. It's like a post fade output, which makes sense from a bus structure standpoint because you have control of those levels. But on a headphone level, if I make any headphone adjustments, it changes the gain structure going to that output. Now you might be saying, Michael, well, why do you want to use that rather than just what you're doing now with the bus? Well, the reason is I want to be able to PFL, say, a wire ISO and check it and have the crew hear it. So hopefully we could see maybe an update from Sound Devices to be able to do that pre-fade send. And I believe when I was using the 6 series recorder, it was a pre-fade send. So on the X3, for instance, when we listen to a headphone bus, it's also pre-fade send. So that kind of forces you into a little bit of a different workflow, which is not a problem, but the goal ultimately would be, and let me go to this screen here, if I get to the, let's see here, if I choose mix or mix comms, and when I'm rolling and I go to mix, it also gives the benefit of the crew of not hearing anything coming from the comms. So another way that this could be accomplished is also by adding auto mute to the buses as well as the outputs. So you've got auto muting for record, auto muting for stop, auto muting for play, which is extremely valuable, like especially if you want to have a speaker on the cart or something like that. But it would be nice to add auto muting also to the buses. So when it comes to the communication systems, you have all of the different components and you have the routing. And I'm trying to think what it is that maybe for comms that we should talk about that we didn't cover. One of the things that I want to mention here is make sure that you'll want to make sure that your receive antennas for your comms are elevated on the cart. This particular system, the Sony, I have it higher up on my cart because the antennas, which are quarter wave whips, won't actually, they can't be dialed into a distro. And then there's also a few other small details that I think would be worth sharing. I had talked about keeping these things on away from talent. So one of the things I really like about these Sonys is that I use them in the STL band, and that is your 944 band. If is another way to say it. So 944 to like 951 or 55. So that completely keeps these out of the way of my talent. It does require a Part 74 license to work in this band, just as a note, which I do have. But I never have to coordinate these things, and I always have my free 470 to 608 real estate available. So that's another very powerful thing about this system. The other really powerful thing about this system is that the receivers themselves can be remoted to set. So since they have a mic level output, we could easily deploy like a 100-foot cable and get it closer to the set when we need to. So it's a very powerful thing. And since it's battery powered, you can also like Velcro it to a C-stand or something like that, which is another really nice thing about the system. I think from a comm standpoint, that kind of covers most of what's going on here. I thought I would just open it up a little bit here, just for some Q&A and also to say hello and maybe get an opportunity for folks to ask questions and kind of take it from there. And also I want to give a special thank you to Surf Sound Finland on Instagram for the suggestion. Say, hey, can you go over the crew comm system? And it's something that I realized is like, wow, this is kind of an involved topic, but it's something very, very important. And I think one other thing I want to mention is that most of the comm systems that I've used, because this isn't the first type system I've used, you'll want to evolve over time. So I've always kind of used the gear that I had. I had talked about starting with walkies, and then I moved into using, I believe, Sennheiser G3s. I've tried different types of routing structures. You might work with a boom operator who wants to hear a pre-fade ISO of themselves only. You can do all that kind of stuff, providing you think through the routing process, come up with a routing plan and something that works specifically with your crew, because the primary benefit of a well dialed in comm system is going to be efficiency. You're going to accomplish excellent efficiency on a film set by doing that. So I think that kind of covers the crew comms topic. I'd like to get into a little bit of a Q&A here real quick and say hello. And first up, I want to say hello to Zlatko. Great to see you here. Thanks for following on Instagram. Absolutely, my pleasure. Thanks for being a part of this channel, Zlatko, and always showing up. Great to see you here. And we got Diamond District Studios tuning in from Cape Town, South Africa. Wow, thank you so much for being here. It's great to see you. And it looks like we got also a question here from Zlatko, so let's go ahead and pull it up. Noob question, why crew have to hear a mix? Okay, sorry about that, Zlatko, I misread. If it's a boom operator, I understood why, but the utility have to hear also. So that's a great question, Zacho. So in the type of work that I do, things are moving incredibly fast. So the utility, to answer your question specifically, is usually handling on my crews most of the wiring. And they need to be able to hear what's happening to see if there needs to be any adjustments. And it could be anything from a subtle adjustment on a wire. It could be footsteps that you hear on the ground where they want to put carpets down. So having everyone on the same page as far as the communication is concerned really allows us to accomplish the best results that we can. So it's kind of like bonus points that directly affect the quality of the sound that we get. That's a really good question, Zacho. I appreciate you asking that. And thanks so much for being here. Fluke says, thanks. Yeah, great to see you again, Fluke. Appreciate you being here. We also got a comment, looks like here from Jordan Hood Taylor. Said, thanks for doing this, Michael. It's always helpful to hear other mixers' workflow. And Jordan, I have to agree 100%. I always am learning from, this is something that I've noticed that each mixer kind of has their own type workflow. And I think one thing I've probably seen most is usually wireless that they were using before end up being the crew wireless. So like when there's an upgrade to wireless, usually you can use what you've already had as a crew wireless, COMS system. So absolutely. And the routing here too, it's really can be what you want it to be. Obviously we've got two if you're using an 8 series recorder, you've got two on the Scorpio, two return COMS. Two balanced line level inputs that can be assigned to any bus or output. So I wanted to mention that. Like what I'm doing here is a little different. And there's a reason, and one of the primary reasons was because I wanted, it's a mic level output on the receivers I'm using, and I want to send it to a mic level input. But yeah, thanks so much, Jordan, for the comment. I want to say thank you, everyone, for attending the stream and here on Soundcart Live. And it's always a pleasure to do this. And I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap everything up here right on time today. And we'll look forward to seeing everyone very soon. Thanks so much.